I've been using Descript for a year now, actually over a year, and there are some things that I absolutely love about what it does, and then there are some things that just grind my gears about Descript. And I want to tell you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. One of my favorite things about Descript is something that you don't think about very often until it's a problem, and that is that when you create a project in Descript and you import your media, so here I'll just go ahead and import a video file to work with, it brings that file into Descript and it acts like a cloud video editor because the files I bring in are being stored by Descript in the cloud as well as locally. But Descript is managing all that. So if I take a file that happened to be in my downloads folder and I put that inside Descript and then I end up clearing out my downloads folder or I move things around, Descript doesn't have a meltdown and start telling me, oh, I can't find the file, something's moved, you need to relocate it or put placeholder things in where my video should be, which is really frustrating. Now on the flip side, there's no place within Descript that you can store and catalog and organize your media files. So if you have videos or overlays or audio sound bites or sound effects that you use in more than one project, you use them over and over again, there's no place in Descript to keep those things and store them or even really link to them, unless you decide to use Descript's templates, which is a whole nother thing. It's possible, but it's kind of a pain. I'd rather just have access to a media library. Another love with Descript is when I drag a file in, if I drag it in here onto the preview canvas, it's going to add it in as a layer, which is not going to be part of the script, so it's not going to worry about the words and the spoken language too much. But if I drag it over to here, you'll see I get this little pop-up that says drop anywhere to transcribe. And when I drop that file there, it's going to start automatically transcribing. It'll pop up and say, hey, we're working on this transcription, but can you give us a little help here? How many people should we be looking for in this audio? And what are their names if you know? Now, if you don't know, you can click unsure and then hit done, and it'll have you label them in a minute. It'll pop up with a thing to help you label them. But in this case, I know there's one speaker and his name is me. So I can do that and say done, and now I've told Descript it's me, it knows what to do, and it's going to work on transcribing that file. It doesn't take terribly long, it does take a few minutes. On the frustrating side, Descript makes a lot of transcription errors. It's trying to do a lot. It's not just going to give you one big, solid, long, obnoxious paragraph of text that's impossible to sort through. It'll try and break everything down into paragraphs and sentences and use commas and periods and exclamation points, and all that is wonderful. The problem is that it gets a lot wrong. I've used several AI transcription tools, both those that are standalone and those included in video editors, and I have to say, Descript is solidly at the top of the bottom half of those in terms of accuracy. But it's still pretty daggone handy. I'll show you why. Everywhere you see this series of dots in the transcription, that's a pause, or what Descript thinks is a pause, at least. So it makes it pretty easy to spot where you had silences in your recording and things you might want to cut out. And sure, you could do that on a waveform, but if you're doing it in a waveform in a timeline, you don't really have the word before it and the word after it sitting right there to figure out what's what. You have to go play through, and that's frustrating. Another thing I really like, especially for editing podcasts or any multi-speaker stuff, is the automatic speaker labels. Now remember, we just told it who was who in that little pop-up when it was transcribing. In this case, I'm the only speaker, so what you see, Bob, the speaker label up here, that runs through this whole thing. If I had multiple speakers here, it would do its best to detect when I'm speaking and when the other person is speaking. Where it gets a little frustrating, though, is that it has a real tendency to take the last word or two or three from one speaker and attribute it to the next speaker. So there's quite a bit of fixing to be done. And it's not always very cooperative when you're trying to tell it to change where the speaker starts. The biggest feature of Descript, and probably the best thing about it, is that you really can edit videos by editing text. That part I love. It saves me a ton of time. But it's not perfect at lining up the words with the audio. And therefore, when you cut a word, if it's not lined up with the audio, you're going to be cutting something that isn't the word or that's way more than the word. Same thing with spaces. And that's why I always work with the timeline on. We can drag our timeline up and now we can see the waveform. Well, if I like the waveform, then why not just work with a typical editor where I can work on the waveform? See, being able to find my place in the script with the words is super handy, but I use the timeline to double check and make sure I'm getting the precision that I need. Let's just look at these spaces that are in here. Sometimes you'll find that these blank spaces include words or audio that Descript just didn't understand and therefore didn't transcribe, but there's actually text in there that you don't want to cut out of your project. Here's an example. If I have this blank space selected up here in the script and I come down to the timeline, I can see that what it's selected is not entirely blank. There's something that starts off in there. There's clearly a word. Let's see what it is. Okay, it's an or an so I'd be perfectly happy to get rid of that, but it's not always just an or that gets labeled here as blank space. And where that really becomes a problem is not when you're going through the timeline and looking at things, because obviously you can see it. Where this becomes a real issue is if we come up to this little actions doohickey, where we have all these cool things that we can do, like remove or shorten the word gaps, and we click on that rascal and we say find any gap that's 1 second or more long, and shorten it down to just 1 second. Good news, over here on the right in this panel, it's going to show you search results, which are all the places where this would apply. If you want, you can audition each one of those. You can click that, it'll jump right to it, play it, let you hear what it's about to do. But if you don't, if you were just to say, okay, find any spaces that are 1 second or more and shorten them to 1 second, shorten all, it's going to clip out things based on what it interpreted the spaces to be. It will take spots here where it wasn't correct, and it'll be cutting that out. Now, in this case, that's an I don't care if it cuts it out. That'd be great if it does. But sometimes these are actual words and phrases that you wanted to keep in. So that makes that couple click deal of getting rid of spaces not so much a useful thing. And there's a similar issue that you run into when you say, I want to get rid of the filler words, get rid of all the uhs, and all those kinds of things. This is the list of other words that it is hunting for. You can turn on or off if there's certain words you don't want it to get rid of. That's pretty awesome. But again, the issue is if I just say delete and remove all, it's going to go through and it's going to clip what it thinks is a filler word. The issue is that sometimes Descript's interpretation of the audio in the transcript is a little bit misaligned. So if it thinks one of your words, this like up here, if it thinks it's longer than it is and aligns it over here a little bit into where the I is actually happening, you'll end up taking out the like I and not just the like. Or if it's back too far and it thinks like starts back here somewhere, which it does sometimes, you'll be chopping off the word saying, and then your audio will sound pretty dumb. The concept of removing filler words and silences in one click is pretty awesome. In practicality, not so much. So my workflow for dealing with these filler words and these spaces that I want to get rid of, I don't rely on the single click, replace all the filler words, or the single click, get rid of all the spaces or shorten word gaps, whatever it's called. Instead, I look at the script, and fortunately, these dots show me where the spaces are, and these underlines show me where the filler words are. So I can look at those one by one, which isn't terrible because they're popping out by their underlines, and I can make a decision. So I can see, well, and it goes right into you. And I'm not sure I want to cut that out because it's probably not going to sound good if I just chop the well off and go straight into the you.
Well, you could read.
We can try. Click on the word well here, and we'll cross it out, which means ignore. This little strike through in the S means ignore.
Languages. So you could reach more people.
I'm not sure I love the way that you starts off, so I'm going to put the well back in. And then I can move on to the next one. Here I've got a double take.
Let's see what we've got.
I did a double what we. So I can cross that out, ignore it.
Let's see what we've got.
I'm not crazy about the way that came out, which leads me to the next feature that I really love about Descript, which is regenerate. Regenerate allows you to select a word or a couple of words, click regenerate, and it will analyze the voice of the person speaking, and then it will recreate that word in that voice, even if it's not a voice you have trained in Descript as an AI voice clone type of thing. So let's come here to where we have this. We have
Out and see what we've got.
I don't like the way the what we've got is coming through. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to have to delete this because it will not cooperate if you have ignored text next to it. You instead have to have text that's still in there. Let's change the C and what. because that's where the split is. So let's regenerate those two. It's doing its thing here. It takes a minute, and it's decided that it also, in addition to the C and what, it needed to replace and weave as well.
So let's try it out and see what we've got.
After regenerate, it was much less choppy. Regenerate will only work with words that are already in the audio. It won't let you change a word to something different. For example, if I'm editing this video and I decide to get cute and change this word people to idiots, it won't let me do that. There's no way I can change that in regenerate. All it's doing is regenerating the word that is already there. This is probably a good thing because you can't take somebody else's voice that you haven't trained and done a consent recording for and make them say something different than they have. The only way to change this word or add another word is to use overdub. And for overdub, you either have to train the AI on the voice that you want to use, or you can use one of Descript's stock voices. Let me show you how this works. Now I'm underneath this speaker labeled Bob, so it knows it's me. Everything under here is me. So I can come down here to replace, and I can click overdub, and I can change people to viewers. And click overdub. Now, instead of looking at the word that was spoken here and regenerating it, it's going to, my AI voice is going to find the voice I trained and create that word in that voice. And it also decided apparently that the best way to do that was to replace the word more with the word more again. Sometimes it figures out that in order to make a smooth transition into that new word, it needs to change a word before or after it.
Well, you could reach more people that would be.
That was really helpful. That's another fun thing about Descript. Sometimes things like that happen that there's no rhyme nor reason for. Which leads me to another thing that drives me nuts, which is, you've seen I've had this up here, a new version of Descript is ready, restart. This happens way too frequently, and I realize you may be saying, well, if you had restarted when it first came up, maybe you wouldn't have had that problem. Well, maybe not. I was leaving that up because I wanted to bring up that issue later in the video, but here's the problem, so we'll deal with it now. So we'll go ahead and restart. It's updating Descript. My frustration with this is not that there are frequent updates. You would think, I mean, that's a good thing, right? We're making the software better, we're fixing bugs, all that kind of stuff. That's awesome. My problem is the timing of it. You open up a project in Descript, you get into Descript. I guess that's where it's doing the download in the background or whatever, but it's when you're ready to really get moving and get some work done that pops up and, oh, we need to just start all over here. Come on, Descript, do these updates in the background when I'm not in there trying to work on a project. And now we're pretty much where we were originally, and we wanted to replace that overdub with, what did we say, viewers? Viewers it is. Try again.
Well, you could reach more people that would be interested.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And if you're wondering, no, this is not an issue with my AI voice that's really poorly recorded or anything like that, and I can show you that.
This is a test of my AI voice.
Okay, so you can see my AI voice is working fine, but for whatever reason, it is not liking overdub replacing a word today. And if you'd like to know what the stock voices sound like, we can switch to Browse All Stock AI Speakers. We can pick Alan here, and it will now convert this into Alan's voice instead of mine. It's still pulsating up here, so we know it's working. And we've got an error there getting hung up because when we changed this to Alan, that then said that everything below here is Alan. It didn't pick up that I just wanted Alan for this line. It went ahead and said Alan is the speaker from here on out. So then when it's trying to do these couple words in my voice and the Bob voice, it says, oh, that's not Alan. So we can't do that. So we need to go back over here and we need to do an @ symbol and we need to change that to Bob and tell it, no, this was Alan. Now we're back to Bob. All right, so here's what Alan sounds like.
This is a test of my AI voice.
So the overdub, not a huge fan, personally. Back to something good, captions. Captions in Descript are easy and awesome if your transcript is accurate. Templates, hit gallery and captions, and then we'll have some captions to pick from. We can do karaoke, we can do one word at a time, we can do clean with a shadow. We'll just pick the classic outline and it'll say it's applying the template. We don't want to change the video orientation, but we can just drag these around and resize that box. we can click this little settings button out next to it. We can change the fill, the border, the background, what the active word looks like, what future words are going to look like.
What if you could take one of your videos or all of your videos and dub them?
If you just want to change this, you want that current word that's being spoken, say we wanted that in some horrible red here, we can do that. You can scrub through and see what it's doing, or you can play it to see what it's doing. Captions in Descript are super easy, again, as long as your transcript is right, because it's going based off of whatever's typed over here in the script. If one of these words over here is typed wrong or missing, duplicated, or the alignment of the word with the speech is off, it's going to show up in your captions. So if you want good captions, you got to make sure your transcript is right first. And you can make corrections in the transcript without affecting the audio by just selecting a word that you need to fix, and then you hit correct, and it'll let you change the word. So for instance, if I had actually said video singular in here and it transcribed it as videos plural, I could just do this correction, take off the S, say correct, and it'll change the transcript. It won't change anything about the audio or the timeline, just the transcript. One of my very favorite features in Descript is the one-click studio sound, which is pretty darn awesome. For this, all you have to do is come up here to the audio effects and click this little toggle that says studio sound. It's one click, it'll apply the studio sound. It does an outstanding job of taking mediocre sound and making it into really good audio. Couple things, however. Sometimes if you leave this set at a 100% intensity, it will have a tendency to sort of chop off words that are low volume or spoken more softly than the other words, particularly at the end of a sentence where people tend to trail off. Sometimes it's in the middle. And sometimes when you fidget with the intensity to avoid that problem, you end up with a weird sound altogether, like an echoey, robotic, electronic, I don't know what, that makes it a no-go. So sometimes, certain audio that I use, I'll end up where I can't have the studio sound on at 100% or it chops off words, and I can't tone it down to avoid that problem because it makes it sound all wonky. It's pretty rare. That doesn't, I'd say maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 times I try to use studio sound, I have that issue.
Information or entertainment that you have to share that don't speak the language that you do.
Now see, that took out that weird hiss I had going on, and I very much like that, because I can't stand hiss in my audio. Something else that drives me nuts about Descript is how we deal with layer timing. Now if I'm down here and I want to have just this part here, I want to put some text over that. I need a text overlay at the top, maybe to explain something that I'm not talking about, or give a reference link or something like that. Clicked in here, come up to the title bar, I can click text, dropped it on, I want to move it around. I've got to select out of it and back into it before I can move it, put it up here in the upper left-hand corner. The problem is it has applied this across the entire project. Well, I don't want the text across the entire project. If I want to fix that, I have to have the timeline open, grab and drag the beginning of it down to where I want it to start, and I have to come grab and drag the end of it to where I want it to end, wherever that might be, in order to get it to only show up where I want it to. To prevent that kind of a problem, you have 2 options. You can pick the area where you want to add this thing. Let's say I only want it to appear across this. When these words are being spoken, that's when I want my text. I can select them all up there, click my little title button, text, put it up here, and now it's only going to appear when those words are being spoken. So you got to remember to do that. Now, your other option is to create scenes, and scenes are very handy, and as you might have noticed, we went from 1 scene over here in the scene rail to 3 when we told Descript we wanted to add something, add a layer just on this 1 section of text. It went ahead and for us split that section into its own scene by putting these little / marks before and after it. Either way, it drives me quite batty that I cannot just select this title and somewhere over here in the properties tell it when I want it to start, when I want it to end. That would make sense, right? My last gripe with Descript is changes. Oh my gosh, the changes. They've slowed down a little bit recently, which is great. There for a while, every time you went in, it felt like everything was different. Like they had just put it in a bag, shook it up, and threw it back on the screen. You didn't know where anything was or how anything worked anymore. For example, one feature I use a lot in Descript is markers. It looks like this. and then you can change the name of that. One thing I do when I'm editing and I need to walk away, make a marker that says resume editing here. You can also use markers to sort of define different parts of the project, break it up into sections so that you can find what you're looking for. It can also be used to separate sections, and then you can export based on those markers. Now here's my gripe. It used to be to create a marker, you just type the letter M and you're creating a marker. Not anymore. One day they decided to change that, and instead of the letter M, now it's Shift and 3 to start a marker. Well, when I've got my fat fingers trained for months and months and months that M gets me a marker, and all of a sudden you switch it to now I need a Shift and a 3, come on, you're killing me. Another obnoxious change they've made is that by default, the timeline is hidden. And as you can see, I rely on the timeline a lot. I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't. There's no option in here to set this to show the timeline when you come into the project. It is by default hidden, and every time I open a freaking project, the first thing I gotta do is open the timeline back up. Listen, they have made a ton of good changes, quality improvements as well. For instance, they used to have these 3 modes that the script panel worked in. It's like a writing mode, an overdub mode, and some other mode. I don't even remember what it was, but it was clunky and it was confusing. They've simplified that now to you've got kind of the main mode, and then you can click this to switch yourself into write mode. And the difference there is when you're writing, you're creating the script, and when you're not writing, this is where I'm more or less working with the project, working with the video and audio files, and I might be managing them from the script, if that makes any sense. They've cleaned this all up, and it works a lot better now, and it pretty seamlessly goes in and out of writing mode for you. Another thing that I like about Descript is an effect that it calls green screen, and this drives me nuts. This should be called background removal because it doesn't rely on a green screen. This is another single click of a button AI deal. No, it's not super fast. I believe this is happening on Descript's side of the fence up on in the clouds or whatnot, which of course means there's a trade-off because yeah, it takes a little bit longer for this stuff to happen. But on the other hand, you don't hear the fans on my computer trying to take off into outer space because it's not doing a whole bunch of super duper processing to make this happen. And after a few minutes, what you end up with is your background removed. Now you notice that that was not a green screen. I don't have a green screen behind me. But this was still able to remove everything but me. Now this thing, as with most AI background removers, really seems to struggle with chairs, at least my chair, and I've seen it in some other creators' videos too. You can see behind me on the screen, it's sort of wrestling with, is that me or is that not part of me? So the chair fades in and out. Another nifty AI feature that Descript has is eye contact. You can add that by just clicking Effects and Eye Contact. Now, eye contact is in beta, and here's what I'll tell you. When it works, it's awesome. Not only does it make your eyes look like they're looking at the camera the whole time you're recording, except for when you're looking completely away to the side. It'll rotate them within their sockets, but it's not going to drag them onto the side of your head or anything. So that's good. It does a great job of making you look like you're looking at the camera when it works. It even fixes my wonky eye. If you haven't noticed yet, I got one eye that when it's not doing anything, it just kind of rolls on into the middle and hangs out there next to my nose. I don't know why. Now the downside is that at least half the time that I have tried to use eye contact, it just doesn't work. It takes forever trying to apply, and then it comes up and says, it failed, couldn't do it, sorry. And I got to the point where I don't really even use it anymore because it's just so unreliable whether it's going to work or not, and it takes so much time and ties up my project while it's trying to do it, and I got things to do. So if I got something else that I'm working on, fine, I'll click it, I'll let it run and see if it works or not and go do something completely different. But if I'm really focused on keeping working on this project where I'm thinking about adding eye contact, it's a no-go because it's going to tie up the project for so long and it may or may not work. So the delay is not worth the maybe it might do something cool. One thing I found when trying to apply these AI effects, particularly the eye contact effect, is don't touch anything in the project while it's working. Don't make any other edits. You've just got to let it sit there and do its thing. If you fiddle with things while it's working, you're almost guaranteed that it's going to ultimately fail, at least in my experience. Here's a spot, a frame in the video. This is with eye contact applied. If I turn it off, that's where my eyes actually were. On, off, on, off. That's not me looking up at the camera. That is Descript's AI eye contact correction rotating my eyeballs inside their sockets toward the camera. There's a lot to love in Descript, and that's why I still keep using it. Most of the tools that I use have some level of frustration built in, especially when you're trying to use the cutting edge stuff that's all up in the AI, which the AI is what's giving us a lot of automation and time saving stuff that I absolutely need because I'm a one-man band here. Maybe you are too. What I've got to say about Descript is not intended to discourage you, but just to give you the full picture of my experience. Other people may not find some of these things irritating as I do. Other people may have other bones to pick or love things that I'm just not so fond of. If you haven't tried Descript yet and it looks like it would be good for you, there's a link in the description. I am an affiliate, so I may receive a small commission if you end up making a purchase. And now you're wondering why in the world, if you're promoting this product, are you telling us about all this stuff that drives you nuts? Well, I think that's the honest way to go. And look, some of these things that drive me nuts may not bother you at all. There may be things that I think are cool that you're not so fond of and vice versa. I just want to be straight with you. You know what you're getting into. Like I said, a lot of good about it. I still use it. I renewed my subscription and I plan to, unless there's something awesomer that comes out.